everyone, welcome back to Finance Friday. This is our bonus edition of Money Girl, where I answer your money questions. So keep them coming. You might want to email them or call them in to me. However you get them to me, I love getting your questions and featuring them here. Today's question comes from Rachel, who says, I'm leaving a large corporation to relocate for a 2-year job with a small nonprofit in a different state. I'll be renting a furnished house in my new city. However, I still own the home that I previously lived in and am renting it out. I have informed my current homeowner's insurance company that I'm now a landlord. I plan to purchase a renter's insurance policy and update my auto insurance policy when I arrive at my new address. Here are my questions. Will any of my relocation expenses or mileage driving to my new home be tax deductible? Since I'll have income in multiple states from my new job, my rental property, and an inheritance from somebody who lives in another state, will I need a tax professional for each state? And do I need to change my vehicle tag if I'm unsure how long I'll stay in the new state? And what checklist or financial housekeeping tips do you have for moving out of state for a new job? I'm so grateful to have learned from your podcast about pertinent things as well as for future situations that I didn't anticipate. Thank you so much for your kind words and great questions, Rachel. I kind of improvised her question a little bit here, but basically I have relocated out of state for work multiple times, so I can definitely give you a good checklist to follow. This podcast will help you decide if relocating for a job is a good move and know how to prepare for it so the transition goes as smoothly as possible. Again, welcome back. This is episode 947 of Money Girl. I really appreciate you downloading the show. I'm Laura Adams, an award-winning author, on-camera spokesperson, money speaker, and founder of The Money Stack. That's my Substack newsletter. You can learn more, submit your money questions, and sign up for The Money Stack when you visit lauradadams.com. By the way, my newsletter subscribers automatically receive my Money Success Toolkit with the exact templates I use to manage money. So that's something you'll automatically receive when you sign up, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, so let's talk about a great financial checklist for moving out of state. While taking on a new job is incredibly exciting, moving is one of the most stressful life events because there are so many tasks to plan for and complete. And I think going out of state just adds a layer of complexity because there are even more things you need to do and to do them by certain deadlines. So I hope this checklist will help you have a successful move that will be a little less stressful. So the first tip is to understand the cost of living in a new place. So when you're considering a move to a new state, so before you've even agreed to a job or, leased an apartment to rent, I recommend taking the time to get to know your new potential city. I would say at the very least, spend a whole day there exploring the area where you might want to live or, choosing an area where you might want to be. Ensure you feel comfortable there and understand how you or your movers will access it, especially if you move into a challenging place, like I did when I moved into the 21st floor in a very busy downtown city, into this huge high rise. That was logistically pretty difficult. And so thankfully, I had really great movers. You can use an app like Zillow to research the values of homes or the cost of renting a suitable place in various communities that you're interested in. And remember that the rents that you see probably don't include many fees that you may have to pay, like parking in a garage, leasing appliances like a washer and dryer, or having a pet. So work with a local real estate agent who handles rentals to find out what's on the market and maybe even tour a few places with them if possible. Note if an area is walkable, if there's good public transportation, access to shopping, maybe you're looking for particular types of restaurants, or, you just want to look for things like bumper-to-bumper traffic on nearby roads and highways, just get a feel for the area. You might be surprised by how different the culture, recreation, and cost of living will be compared to your current home. That was certainly the case for me when I moved from Florida to California, and then later I moved from California to Texas and back to Florida. But when I relocated from Florida to the California Bay Area, I knew that buying a similar home would cost literally 4 or 5 times more than I paid for the home that I was living in Florida. So renting in California would give me a much better value, especially since I didn't know how long I would live there. While California salaries and wages, especially in Silicon Valley, are high, in many cases, they're not commensurate with the area's housing costs. Additionally, California has one of the highest state income tax rates, and food prices are notoriously expensive. Avocados were one of the few things in California I ever felt were a bargain compared to food prices in Florida. So suppose you earn $80,000 a year in Florida and you get an offer to do the exact same job in California for $140,000. While that might sound appealing, what if the extra $60,000 a year wouldn't cover your higher California housing, food, and taxes? In other words, you want to be sure that a relocation won't be a net drain on your lifestyle. I knew people who moved to California after getting what seemed like a very high offer from a startup, only to end up practically living in their car or having to share a tiny apartment with multiple people because they didn't know how expensive housing was before they accepted the job. Now, in some cases, having less disposable income might be worth it for a job that is a massive stepping stone in your career. But if being financially worse off is something you don't anticipate, a relocation could be incredibly disappointing. So again, just make sure you understand what the area is like and get a sense of the realistic cost of living there. All right, the second tip is to estimate your moving expenses. Relocating out of state comes with many expenses. The largest may be hiring a moving company to pack your belongings, transport them, and unpack your boxes. Even if you do all the boxing and unboxing, a long-distance mover charges by weight, which can range from 50 cents to $1 per pound. Plus, there are extra fees for things like insurance, labor, fuel, and any last-minute packing that's required. So shop the cost of a potential move with several moving companies to understand their services and fees. Be sure they specialize in the type of move that you'll need, such as a cross-country move over several days, moving into a high-rise building downtown, or handling delicate items like a piano, expensive artwork, or collectibles. If you don't drive your vehicle or vehicles to a new location, the cost to ship a car could range from 50 cents to $2 per mile, depending on the total distance, the type of vehicle you have, and the method of transportation, such as having an open trailer or an enclosed trailer. So search online to ensure that any moving or transportation company you hire has good reviews. Rachel asked if her relocation expenses or mileage driving to her new home would be tax deductible. Unreimbursed moving expenses for a job used to be tax deductible before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. However, that law suspended the deduction for most taxpayers through this year, through 2025. However, as of July the 4th, 2025, the One Big Beautiful Bill permanently eliminates the tax deduction for moving expenses, with an exception that previously existed for the military and the intelligence community. So moving for a job, even to a different state, means you can't deduct the cost of transporting your belongings or traveling to your new home on your federal tax return unless you have military or government orders requiring you to move. For them, the IRS does allow a mileage rate of 21 cents a mile for moving. However, again, that only applies to exempted individuals. But I will say tax rules vary by state, so Rachel, you should check the state you're leaving as well as moving to for any potential state-level moving deductions, or consult with a tax professional for guidance. It's always wise to keep detailed records of all moving costs in case you need to use them to your advantage in the future. I always recommend negotiating with an employer to cover the costs of a move, whether it's the actual expenses or a predetermined flat rate when you accept an out-of-state job. Since the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, these expenses are generally considered taxable income to an employee. So remember that you'll net less after taxes and consider increasing the gross amount to account for the portion that you've got to pay to the federal and any state governments. Okay, the third thing on our checklist is to pare down your belongings. Since moving more things costs more, it's the perfect time to pare down your possessions, especially the heavy ones that you can live without. There's no need to pay for transporting sporting goods, furniture, and artwork that won't fit into your new space or match your decor. While boxing up your belongings is a lot of work, it forces you to keep only what you genuinely want and need. Additionally, the cost of packing supplies like boxes, tape, markers, bubble wrap, and packing paper can add up quickly. Consider acquiring used boxes that are still in good condition from a local mover who needs to dispose of them. The more work, packing and unpacking you do for a move, the less you'll have to pay somebody else to do it. However, movers typically won't insure boxes that they don't pack because they don't know whether you did a good or bad job. My experience is that good movers are worth paying for because they know how to safely transport your belongings and navigate complex situations like staircases, doorways, elevators, and any other scenario you can imagine. They can make potentially stressful situations during a long-distance move much easier to manage. All right, the fourth thing on our checklist is to discuss your insurance. Moving to a new state will affect most of your insurance policies. Plus, if you have renters or homeowners insurance covering your belongings, only a portion of it applies when they're in transit or off premises. So the insurance for your possessions could be as little as 10 or 20% of your total coverage amount, which is likely insufficient. Movers must provide you with a limited amount of coverage, typically based on weight, and usually offer you additional coverage for a fee. So carefully consider the amount of off-premises coverage you already have and whether you want to supplement it. If you have valuable items, consider buying actual replacement value insurance. That's going to cost a little bit more, but the policy to repair or replace your items gets based on their agreed upon value, which you do have to declare to the mover when you purchase coverage. Rachel mentioned that she's already informed her insurance company that she'll have a tenant in her home, so that's great, Rachel. And that's essential because they may not honor a claim if you don't switch to a landlord policy, which assumes more risk. If your insurer is licensed in your new state, they can assign you a new agent to update your policy or even sell you a new one in your new location. However, you may want to shop around and compare quotes for your new place with different carriers, just to get a sense, because definitely rates are going to vary significantly from state to state. Property risk can be very different in your new location, so also ask what coverage may be needed. For instance, I bought earthquake coverage in California. You could need insurance for hurricanes, wildfires, windstorms, or even a separate flood policy based on where you'll be living. Your auto insurance rates are based on your location, so you definitely need to update your policy, which Rachel said she's already thinking about. Again, if your insurer is licensed to operate in your new state, they can update your policy, but if not, you'll need to shop around for a new carrier and definitely compare quotes. Your auto insurance must be updated before you can register your vehicle in a new state, so make that one of your first tasks as you settle in. If you don't get health insurance through an employer, moving to a new state is considered a qualifying life event. That allows you a special enrollment period to sign up for a new health insurance plan outside of the regular open enrollment period. And you'll need to enroll in a new plan in your new state, either through the state or federal marketplace or through a private broker. If you have a national health plan and you're with a large employer, your coverage may transfer to the new state, but you just want to confirm that. To avoid a lapse in coverage, coordinate the end date of your old plan with the start date of any new plan. Additionally, inform your doctors and dentists that you're moving and that you'll have professionals request your medical records once you establish them in your new community. Number 5, start a list of address changes needed. If most of your mail comes to your email address instead of a physical address, that makes address changes a whole lot easier when you move. When you know your new address and your moving date, inform the U.S. Postal Service when to begin forwarding your mail. And you want to start a list of accounts and companies where you'll need to go into your account and change your address, including bank accounts, credit cards, lenders, any other financial institutions, things like magazines and subscription services, of course, your insurers, your professionals, maybe like an attorney or accountant, perhaps a veterinarian for pet registration, all of your utilities like gas, power, water, internet, wireless providers, medical portals, your existing landlord if you rent, your old employer if you have any outstanding issues with them, and the Social Security Administration. Hopefully you have an online account. If not, it's a good time to create one. And the Internal Revenue Service, you submit Form 8822, which is a change of address. That's not a complete list, but maybe certainly a good place to start. Number 6, you're going to set up your new residency. Once you've settled into your new home, establish your legal residency by updating your driver's license, vehicle registration, and voter registration. Most states require you to obtain a new driver's license within a specific time frame. It could be something like 30 to 60 days after relocating there. You'll need to visit your new state's Department of Motor Vehicles, or DMV, or the equivalent agency in person, and you may be able to make an appointment online to minimize the wait time. Find out before you go what documents you're going to need to take. They're going to want to verify your identity and your new address. Some states require you to take a written driving test and in some cases a road test. However, it's often waived if you already have a valid out-of-state license. When I moved to California, I had to take a written rules of the road test, which included several laws that were quite different from Florida, so I had to do a little studying. You'll need to transfer your vehicle's title and registration and pay fees for a new tag. That requires your out-of-state vehicle title, which must be coordinated with your lender if you have an auto loan. To register your vehicle, you'll need proof of auto insurance that meets the new state's minimum coverage requirements. And the DMV will ask for your vehicle identification number or request that you bring your vehicle in for inspection. You can often register to vote when you apply for your new driver's license or register your vehicle. So be mindful of voter registration deadlines in your new state, especially if an election is approaching. Rachel asked about her vehicle tag, and you generally must register your car in a new state after moving there permanently, even if you're not sure how long it'll be. It's typically required within 10 to 30 days of establishing residency. Number 7, consider state taxes and laws. Rachel also asked about whether you need more than one tax professional when you have income coming from multiple states. A good CPA should be able to prepare your tax return and provide guidance regardless of where you have income and expenses. However, I will say if your new state's taxes are a little more complex than the old one, such as having a state income tax or having more regulations for companies if you have business income, it may make sense to hire a tax professional in your new state. For the year you move, you will likely be considered a part-year resident of both your old and your new states. The rules for determining residency vary by state, but they're often based on a 183-day rule, or where you spend more than half the year and where you have a permanent home. You will need to file part-year state income tax returns for both states, allocating your income to the period you resided in each. Tax software can typically guide you through this process, but I certainly recommend using a tax professional. Your new employer should ask you to submit a Form W-4 to ensure the correct federal and any state and local taxes are withheld from your paycheck. And your emergency documents like a will, power of attorney, and healthcare directives should be reviewed by an attorney in your new state to ensure they're valid and will be executed as you intend. And if you don't have these essential documents, definitely put them on your list to do after getting settled in your new home. Yeah, there's a lot to do before, during, and after an out-of-state move, but they don't have to all be done at once. Rachel, I recommend creating a list of your short, medium, and long-term tasks and just focus on those that are most relevant in the moment so you don't get overwhelmed. And for those of you who have moved a lot, let me know if you think I missed any tasks in this show and I can do a follow-up. And Rachel, I hope you have all the best and success in your long-distance move. Before we go, a quick reminder to subscribe to The Money Stack, my Substack newsletter, when you visit lauradadams.com. It's filled with money tips, tools, news, challenges, and things I enjoy. You can subscribe for free or support the show as a paid member and get access to live educational events. That's all for now. I'll talk to you soon. Until then, here's to living a richer life. Money Girl is a quick and dirty tips podcast, and we have an amazing team that works on the show. Steve Rickyberg audio engineers the podcast. Holly Hutchins is our director of podcast. Morgan Christensen is our advertising operations specialist. And Nathaniel Hoops is our marketing contractor.